We've talked before on this channel about different Pro controller options for various systems, but something we don't talk about too much is the opposite end, the cheap budget controllers, the ones that you see at the store and they remind you that time you went to your friend Timmy's house and you got the extra spare GameCube controller from Mad Catz that had 4 extra buttons and a stick that didn't quite work right. But really, when you see one of those, which of them is actually worth grabbing? So let's go over some of the best controllers you can get on a budget for the Xbox One. To begin with, let's take a look at this PowerA Xbox One controller. The reason why I want to start with this one in particular is this, to me, is like the quintessential thing that you immediately imagine in your head when you think of an off-brand controller. All the right buttons are here, they're all in the right general place, but at the same time, there's something a bit off. You know, the shape is mostly the same, but it's a little pointier in some parts. There's a little extra stylization that isn't necessarily, well, necessary. And in general, while it still works perfectly fine, you can definitely tell that with pushing the buttons and everything and moving the sticks, that it's just in general a cheaper design. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that's part of the reason why you want to grab one of these, is it's more affordable. And it's a completely functional controller, it's just not, well, great. In general, as I said, all the buttons work fine. They feel a little cheaper, but none of them feel like they're going to get stuck or anything. The sticks are okay. The only part of this controller that really bothers me is the D-pad. It doesn't really have a good rolling motion to it, and it kind of feels sometimes like if you're to say push left, at the same time you're still also kind of pushing up or down accidentally because the whole thing just likes to shift at once. Second up, we have another controller from PowerA, and it's a little bit more of an interesting option in the Fusion controller. Now, what's interesting about this is that it's very clearly a third-party aftermarket style controller. I mean, the buttons, once again, are a little cheaper, the grip's a little weird, and it is hardwired. But at the same time, this one's trying to also be a pro controller in some aspects. So first, let's just talk about the cheap side of it as well. Now, just like with that other one, all the buttons are fine, but they definitely don't feel like they have the best design going on. One thing it definitely has over the regular PowerA controller, however, is that the D-pad is much better. It actually has a little clickiness to each direction, so it really feels like you're hitting the direction you want to instead of just being one flat surface. Now, as for what pro controller elements this thing incorporates, there's actually quite a few. It has a braided cable, it's got adjustable trigger stops, so you can do the regular full pull or a short stop, and it even has programmable buttons where all you have to do is hold this button right here, hit the button you want to program, and then hit the button you want to map to it. And on top of all that, this thing even has switchable sticks. There's 3 different designs you can do: a concave, a convex, and then a larger concave one as well. Next up, we're going to get a little weirder with a controller from Hyperkin. Now, if you've never heard of Hyperkin before, they're another one of those companies that focuses more on retro-themed products, mostly making systems that'll play old-school cartridges, but they've also made some accessories as well, like this Xbox One controller that is meant to be very reminiscent of an SNES controller. And I gotta say, despite its weird appearance, it actually very pleasantly surprised me in some ways. It actually has really good buttons for being a third-party controller, and even more so is the sticks. I actually really like the sticks on this controller the most out of all the ones I tried for this video. The stick heads are comfortable, and the resistance feels very close to actually using an official Xbox One controller. Still not quite there, but very, very close. Where this controller loses me is the shoulders. The triggers on this thing are very awkward. It has this very heavy resistance pull to them that almost makes it feel like you're not actually successfully pulling the trigger right, and at the same time, the travel distance to the front shoulders is very unnatural feeling. If you're the kind of person that likes to play with all 4 fingers on the shoulders, which I know some people do, this actually works out okay. But if you're like me and you just go switch between, it's very, very awkward. Now, as for the shape of it, yes, it's a little weird. I mean, the SNES controller is cool, it's nice that it's reminiscent of that, but there's a reason we stopped using that shape design. It's just not very comfortable. At the same time, though, I will say that in the case of buying a wired controller for a younger gamer, this very much reminds me of something that Hori did for the PlayStation 4 with a mini gamepad, where the travel distance isn't as bad on this controller other than the triggers, so for a younger gamer, this could actually be a solid choice if you don't want to give them a full-price official Xbox One controller. And then we have PDP's Xbox One controller, which at first glance, something you can notice right away is the fact that this controller is much closer to the actual Xbox One controller shape and design than any of the others. In fact, that's one of the biggest selling points of this one to me, is that when I'm holding it and using it, it feels the least different from all the others. It almost feels at times like I am using my regular Xbox One controller. Now, like with the others, you do lose this feeling a little bit with the buttons and the sticks. It's not quite as good as Hyperkin's, but it is about on par, if not a little better than the ones on PowerA. I do like the sticks on it, the D-pad is solid. What makes this controller different though is that there's just a couple little subtle things about it that I think makes it honestly the best controller on this list. First off, audio controls. All of these controllers have a little place to plug in your headset, but this is the only one of them that offers onboard audio controls on the controller itself. All you have to do is push and hold this button right here next to the right stick, and then use the D-pad to do different options like raising or lowering the volume. The other thing that this controller has going for it is that while it is a wired controller like all the other ones on this list, it is the only one where you can actually unplug the cable, making it way easier to store, way easier to travel with, and just in general, way less of a hassle. And like I said, out of all the controllers, this is the one that is closest to emulating the actual shape of an Xbox One, giving it the greatest comfort. Now, at the end of the day, I do think you should just save up your money and get an official Xbox One controller. But if you're on a budget or you're looking to get something cheaper for a kid to use or anything like that, this is easily the best choice.